James.
Raf.
It finally happened.
What happened?
The answer to the question that everyone's been asking: what is Apple going to do about AI?
Yep.
We've kind of spoken. This is one I would say. I'm going to throw out this. Maybe the most anticipated WWDC Worldwide Developer Conference of all time.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to get people pumped about. They're letting you customize your background. Actually, people were quite pumped about that back in the day.
Did you get, just like broadly, you don't need to be specific, of your WWDC wish list, did it tick off your wish list?
Oh, I got them all. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Mr. Cook. I'm glad to have large language models and machine learning support me in my daily tasks, routines, and sorry, my train of thought was interrupted by Raf.
I spilled
He spilled a kombucha on himself.
Yes.
Is it a kombucha?
It is a kombucha, yes.
Yeah, well, remember back in the day when Dan ran, we used to be pounding beers? I guess this is growing old.
Anyway, yes, WWDC.
Worldwide Developers Conference. For those of you who aren't aware of that, Apple, this is their major software keynote. They do it once a year. So WWDC, they get a whole bunch of developers out to Cupertino in California to talk about Mac and iOS development, talk about what's coming down the pipeline in terms of software. The first day of it, they have a big keynote presentation where they announce basically the next Mac OS and the next iOS, I guess next iPad OS, and now the next Vision OS.
Vision OS, so yeah, we got
and
four
also
things.
their services stuff. And they basically just give an update on what the next version is. They normally roll out the better software afterwards.
Yeah, and the idea is supposed to be, I think, originally like, here is all the new things you can build on the Mac platform.
Yeah, it's to get developers hyped for what they can build on Mac and iPhone, essentially.
Yeah.
But it has evolved into like essentially a signal for consumers as well about what's coming down and a way to get them hyped about.
Which is kind of important because there's a duality to the conference, and that they almost at all times have to deal with this, like, speak to consumers and the consumer press who just want to hear about the new gizmos, and also speak to the developers.
They
and
want to
like,
hear about APIs and shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, exactly. So it's a weird double purpose that they have to try to balance. Talk about things that will excite your average consumer, and also, let's be honest, like the power users who follow this stuff really obsessively. And also be technical enough that the devs get excited about it as well.
Yeah.
So it's a weird delicate balance they have to pull off. This is all relevant because this year, as we kind of talked about in the podcast and also has been forecasted by a million other people, they were talking about AI.
Yeah, what's Apple going to do in AI?
Yep. So how are they going to integrate it into the iPhone and into Mac and into iPad? And they did answer that question as part of this keynote in a way that was kind of interesting. And they announced some partnerships and they announced some stuff that you're going to be able to do on your iPhone, or your stuff's that your phone is going to be able to do for you.
Let's start with the word like AI wasn't mentioned for literally like an hour.
Yeah.
It started with just Tim Cook talking about they're going to discuss later intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, if anyone said that like 5 years ago, you'd be like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to talk about like some kind of phrenology? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, exactly. We're talking about intelligence. Where does it come from? How do we measure it? I wasn't awake to watch the presentation because it happens at like 3 a.m. Sydney time, but I watched it a bit later. But if you look at the tweets, there are a ton of people who are like 50 minutes to an hour into this presentation being like, why haven't they talked about AI yet? And the structure of the prezzo, I think, is kind of interesting. Before we get into like the meat of what they actually talked about and the stuff they announced, they had like 50 minutes to talk about all the non-AI stuff that's coming to the iPhone and coming to Mac and things like that. For example, they were kind of like, you can completely customize your home screen and put your icons wherever you like.
Yeah.
And you can...
Which, like, by the way, look, a lot of these features, this is like a broader thing, I guess. There's obviously a lot of people who are into this kind of stuff, but are just not exciting for me. There's so many portions of this where, and we'll get to it, I guess, with the emojis and stuff, where it's just like, really? We're spending time talking about how you can now, like, your app icons don't have to be in a row. It can be in like a U shape. And you can put like a tint over them.
That's cool stuff. That's cool stuff. No, but
I guess you got to go whatever the numbers are saying, you got to do it.
Yep. So we've talked about on the podcast before that, there's been a lot of reporting that Apple's had this really big sort of internal battle about what AI looks like. Because, okay, foregrounding with a bit of context, again, we've talked about this, but, Apple were caught completely flat-footed by the ChatGPT revolution. They didn't really have anything cooking. And it was kind of funny. At the very beginning of this presentation, Tim Cook gets up in the video and is like, this is something we've been working on for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have been working on sort of machine learning, like neural processing. Like, obviously, they've been building their iPhone chips to be better at handling machine learning. But they definitely had not been doing anything to do with generative AI and ChatGPT and that kind of crap.
No. Yeah.
This is all stuff they've been doing in the past like year and a half.
Yeah.
As soon as ChatGPT came out, they've been scrambling to make something happen.
Yeah, and again, for the context, what was it, a year? Was it the last WWDC or was it like the iPhone launch? Somewhere like 9 months to a year ago, they had the whole presentation where they just didn't mention the word AI once. They mentioned like a large model, but like just refused point blank to say the words AI when there was a hype cycle. And so I think that there is like a weird, this is totally reading the tea leaves, but like there's quite obviously internally, at least certain parties that are very opposed to just jumping on the AI hype cycle, I guess. Like, don't mention it. Like, it's a weird Voldemort-y thing. Like,
you can really, if you watched the presentation, you probably noticed this, but like, you can really feel the internal power struggle about what Apple should do in this regard.
Yeah.
And it has been reported widely that John Giannandrea, who is the head of AI at Apple, has said time and time again, the world doesn't need another chatbot. And he's like not enamored at all by like the whole ChatGPT thing that's been going on. But there are factions inside Apple that are like, that's what consumers want.
Well, I mean, they look at the stock prices of anyone who shows that they're actually making money off AI and would be pointing to them and being like, why is Google getting all of this like additional value through just being an AI company when we're too scared to say the words AI?
And, NVIDIA just overtook Apple in terms of
briefly.
Market cap, briefly.
But yeah, exactly, on the back of AI. And like it's complicated because like then places like Salesforce or whatever are like, we're investing all this money in AI, and their investors are like, but how's it going to make any money? And the stock crashes. So like it is a kind of complex thing.
It's a complex thing. And we know that Apple's general strategy is that they're rarely first to something, but they often come in later and then introduce something, pretend they're the first people to do it, and introduce it in a way that's a bit more user-friendly.
But I guess in this situation, like it is a case of the branding is kind of out of their hands. Like they're not kind of leading the conversation when it comes to AI.
No, they are very visibly chasing it.
And so like they have a reluctance to kind of use the words that everyone else is saying and need to kind of reframe it in some way where they can control the narrative.
Well, they landed on two strong bits of branding here. In the past, I think they fought a valiant battle to be like, okay, everyone's talking about AI. We're just going to keep talking about machine learning.
Yeah.
That I don't think that works.
No. And sorry, the other one is like the Vision Pro, where like they don't really call it like
VR. They say for spatial computing.
Spatial computing.
They're always trying to own the terminology. They've landed on two strong bits of messaging on this. They've obviously given up the machine learning thing. I don't think it was mentioned. It was mentioned, but like certainly not as like a top line thing. They've landed on AI stands for Apple Intelligence.
Yeah, Apple Intelligence.
They said they call it the whole system. They call Apple Intelligence. And then the second one, which both of us were trying to wrap our heads around before, AI for the rest of us.
AI for the rest of us and personal intelligence.
Personal intelligence.
Like Tim Cook said, like this isn't artificial intelligence, it's personal intelligence. It's like, isn't that like what I do? Like, I think. At least I would consider what my brain does to be personal intelligence.
AI for the rest of us really grabs me. What are you talking about?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Again, think about the fact that this presentation is angled at developers and also like Apple diehards who follow the news really closely. And then at the bottom of the pile, people who own iPhones and inevitably get this whatever's announced drip fed to them through like the Sydney Morning Herald or something.
Yeah, like, but for the rest of us implies that like, so the other AI is for the other, it's for a different type of folk.
It's for, you know who I'm talking about.
Right? That's the implication. Like, that's for them. This AI is for us.
This is for AI for the rest of it. It's very funny.
Us, the largest personal mobile phone brand in the world.
Yeah. A bit of AI for the rest of us chumps. Working stiffs.
I don't give a fuck about you.
Yeah.
We do. This is for you and me.
Have you seen the pay packages of these AI scientists? These people are getting $9 million total comp. And you are working in a coal mine. And you don't know what the hell's going on. This is AI for you.
Yeah, I assume, we were speculating on this earlier. Like, it's like, your mum has heard of AI and is like, oh, God, what's this AI thing? It sounds complicated. Is this another thing I have to learn? It's
they're like, no, we're helping you.
Yeah, this is AI for the rest of us folk.
Yeah, exactly.
Me, Tim Cook, and you.
Hard Scrabble, people of the land. Anyway.
AI for the rest of us.
Anyway, so those are the kind of like the weird little bits of branding they've landed on. As we said before, the AI stuff came at like the back end, like the last 20 to 30 minutes of what was like an hour and a half, hour 40 long presentation. It's barely even worth mentioning what came before that. Yeah. But just to run through, they announced like the first thing which I think is interesting because it's been a consistent kind of thing in a lot of their presentations. They lead with Apple TV stuff, like the Apple TV Plus. Tim Cook comes out and goes, here's all the amazing stuff that's coming to Apple TV Plus.
Yeah.
And here are all the Oscars we've won. And I always think that's kind of interesting because, yes, they're really keen on building a services business, but it is kind of for them to come right out the gates and be like, we make content as their first bit of messaging.
That is the play. It's like, we are a services business, recurring revenue, ignore iPhone sales, ignore Mac sales. Like, we're services now.
Yeah.
We're all about the services, folks.
Yeah, and they led with like, here are all the great shows we've released. Here are all the awards we've won, and then they did like a hype reel of all the shows that are coming to Apple TV in future. It's just it's interesting that they keep harping on that. But then they went through the next iOS update, the next iPad OS update, the next Mac OS update, and all the updates they gave were pretty light because the main meat of what they've been working on is AI and LLMs.
Yeah, so they wanted to save that though till
So
later.
they saved us. They didn't really talk about it. Probably the biggest thing that people were talking about is and again, this is kind of AI related. They released an iPad calculator app.
Yeah.
Which
people are frothing over the iPad calculator app.
Because when you first open it, it looks like the regular iPhone calculator app, but blown up. But you can press a button and it opens up like a canvas, and you can, if you write 5 + 3 equals, it will have 8 in your handwriting afterwards.
Yeah.
And you can also do things like declare variables, like X = 9.
Yeah, this is one of those demos where it's like, yes, that looks cool, where you're doing equations or whatever, like Einstein, or like, the movie where Russell Crowe or something is autistic. Whatever.
A Beautiful Mind.
Yeah, and, I think that's the idea. It's like, whoa, cool. Like, you can work out, solve the 8 unsolved maths equation of the world, with your iPad. It's just like, who is...
Yeah, well, the example they used is that they showed the canvas and it was like someone had drawn a picture of a person playing ping pong and like colored it in, because you can draw. This is all with your Apple Pencil on the iPad, obviously. And then like they were like, imagine you and your friends are trying to calculate the velocity of a ping pong ball. Yeah. And it was like, well, I'm out.
No, exactly.
That's not really something I do.
It's real aspirational stuff. Like, oh yeah, absolutely. I'm the kind of person who would draw a picture of me hitting a ping pong ball and then write equations around it to determine the velocity. Like, what?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Again, looks cool, very aspirational.
I think it was a demonstration of like, hey, we're doing some LLM-y sort of like image interpretation shit.
Yeah. But it's a cool demo. That's what I mean.
It's a cool
I just
demo,
wonder, literally what percentage of people who have an iPad are using that feature.
0. But when I looked on Twitter, like Dylan Field, who's the founder of Figma, had tweeted like, this is the coolest thing I've seen Apple demonstrate.
Oh yeah, like when I saw people doing the listicle top 10 features that Apple have announced, like number 1, you can write calculations.
Because that is the audience. The audience is like developers who are like, oh, they've still got it. And average people are like, why do they have a sketch pad in my iPad?
Why am I doing calculus by hand in my iPad?
I'm literally just trying to calculate my monthly salary minus rent. Anyway, so there was that. Again, they announced a handful of little features. Okay, there's 2 things that I thought were quite funny. One was you can hide apps.
Yeah.
And they dedicated like 5 minutes of discussion to this idea that, they framed it as you hand your phone to someone to look at something.
Yeah.
And you've got personal stuff on your phone. So you can lock certain apps. So you need to use like Face ID or passcode to get into it. Or you can hide them all together. And like Craig Federici, who's like the head of software at Apple, was like, sometimes you're going to have an app on your phone that you don't want anyone to know that you have. And the only example he could pull out was like a running joke because he's got like a big puffy hairstyle, like slicked up hair. It's like a running joke that...
It's his branding.
It's his branding. He's got big hair.
Yeah.
And he was like, imagine I've got an app that like is like a library of cool hairstyles. Yeah. And I was like, well, realistically, the only app you're hiding is like if you have
Grindr.
It's Grindr on your phone when you're like, I'm a good married Christian man.
Yeah.
And the other one I thought was kind of fun. They announced the next version of the Vision Pro software, Vision OS 2. Keep in mind, it came out 4 or 5 months ago, and they're already announcing the second version of the software.
Yeah.
They also announced it's coming to Australia in, I think, July 11 is when it lands in Australia. But one of the...
Did we get an RRP on that?
No, I don't think it's live yet. But one thing they announced...
It'll be like $5,000, eh?
Yeah. And most of it was just like quality of life improvements, I imagine, that people have been asking for. But one of them was like talking about creating like 3D immersive video content.
Yeah.
Like how you can make it as a content creator. And they literally described, this is the Vision Pro workflow. And they announced like a Canon lens.
Yeah.
Which is like got two lenses on it that capture depth. Edited in Final Cut, and then it must be uploaded to Vimeo, which is the only platform that supports it. And this is what they were describing on stage.
Yeah.
They were like, you can make video to play on the Vision Pro, but you need to use these 3 specific things.
Yeah.
Because nobody else supports it.
Yeah. I mean, great. And good on Vimeo. We should maybe do an episode on Vimeo. Just being like, great that they're still around.
Well, Vimeo found like the great niche where it's like, all right, we're not going to be YouTube. Although they never really tried to be YouTube. We are the place that like the creative people in your company upload stuff for you to approve.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can comment on it. It's great. And embed it on your website.
I actually think the last time I actually watched something on Vimeo because I wanted to watch something was 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Like actually watching something that wasn't just some business shit, that for approval, or just some random website will have like on their onboarding or whatever. It's like something fucks up and you're on Vimeo watching their onboarding on Vimeo, or you know what I mean? Like, because they don't have a pro account or something.
Yeah. And like, exactly, you click a link to watch something that's Vimeo, but they haven't turned off the download feature, and it somehow feels weirdly low rent. That you could just download their professional... Anyway.
Yeah, sorry, that's neither
there. Anyway, so there was that. There was a bunch of other little tweaks that they've announced for their various operating systems.
Yeah.
They announced some more gaming stuff, and they dragged out like some senior guy at Ubisoft to talk about, we're bringing Assassin's Creed to the iPad. They always dedicate a little bit of time to whatever they're doing in gaming.
Yeah. They're really trying to force it.
Yeah, totally.
You can game on Mac now.
You can game on Mac. They've got a new, suite of tools to convert Windows games into Mac games for developers. Anyway, but
what we want to talk about.
What everyone wanted to talk about was the AI stuff.
Yeah. Apple intelligence.
Apple intelligence. AI for the rest of us,
AI
folks.
for the rest of us. Thank Christ. Finally someone's gone and done it. If it takes Apple to do it, then I tip my hat to them.
I tip my hat.
Whoever will give it to... Because so far no one's made AI for me.
That's it.
Me as the voice of Middle Australia.
You as the voice for the rest of us. So they've pulled all this stuff in, and this is available across, iOS and iPad OS and Mac OS. I guess Vision OS, but I don't think they really talked about it. And they started with Craig Federici, again, coming out as the head of software at Apple. Basically, before they even talked about any of the features, he went into this long diatribe about privacy. Because, this is the thing that obviously Apple are really obsessive about, and they have been for a long time. The idea that they deal with your personal data more respectfully than companies like Google and companies like whatever. This has been like one of Apple's key messages for years. Google is taking all your data and packaging it up and using it to sell you ads. So is Meta.
It's using it to sell you the products that you are most personalized to you and that you'll probably appreciate in your life.
Yeah, exactly. Sicko stuff like that.
Google is connecting you with the brands you love.
Not us. We will never connect you with a brand.
No, fair enough. I get the privacy thing here.
and-
Like, this is the duality of man. I work in ads, folks. Let's be frank.
You're biased towards ads.
And like, there is a certain convenience to getting personalized ads. Like, let's be honest. You'd rather have an ad that's relevant to you than not. But I also don't like the idea of something using all of my messages and emails and search history and web browsing history and map history in order to target me with those ads.
Yeah. Well, this is the quandary that Apple's been dealing with since the ChatGPT stuff happened. Obviously, the vast majority of LLM and AI processing happens on server farms. Mostly like, with OpenAI, it's like Microsoft Azure server farms. Every time you ask a query, you say, what's a beautiful strawberry shortcake recipe for my aunt's 60th birthday? And it incinerates 9 acres of Amazon rainforest to answer that question for you.
Yeah.
It's happening off in some server farm. Traditionally, Apple, they kind of back themselves into a corner because let's be honest, folks. I'm not saying it's the core of it, but a decent chunk of Apple's messaging on privacy is like slapping away competitors. Like the app tracking transparency stuff.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sure that there are people at Apple who really care about privacy, but it was also a way to like kick Meta in the nuts.
Yeah, I mean, and a wedge. Like, I think it's just like, we are the privacy company. If you use our competitor in the phone space, like an Android device, they don't care about privacy. We do. So you make the call.
Yeah, and I think they're right that the average person, even if they don't think about this stuff very much, has like the intuition that Facebook is sickos.
Oh, I literally saw someone on Twitter like 2 days ago saying like, I've never like looked up shoes or anything in my life, but I just happened to be pointing my phone at my shoes, and then I started seeing ads immediately on Facebook for like the same shoes.
Oh yeah,
it's
like
that's not what happened.
The belief that like Facebook is listening to you is got to be one of the most common ambient beliefs that anyone has about technology.
Probably, I'm going to go, like the majority of people, I think that their Facebook
is turning on your iPhone camera and
is listening to you and is targeting ads based on just like everything you say. But they're also like, I mean, they're mad, quote unquote, enough about it to like post about it, but then do nothing else.
Yeah, totally.
Like, so what that actually says to me is they're largely comfortable, and that's not happening. Let's be very clear here. I think that is not what's happening.
I don't think, and the big thing to think about is that like Facebook wanted to learn about your like purchasing behavior and things like that. The stuff that you click on is going to be way less noisy than like ambiently picking up what you're talking about
at all times
and trying to determine what you actually want.
Like every person who has Facebook, Instagram, or WhatsApp installed in the world, just like chugging through every single thing they say and then drawing kind of red line connections between the two to try and sell you specifically that thing. Well, and ignoring all the noise.
Look, Google had the phenomenal insight back in the late 90s and early 2000s that if you type Nike running shoes into a box, you probably want to get them.
Yeah.
And Facebook was really just an evolution of that idea, but as it came to
it started with like, oh, you like the Woolies page, you like the I like hot chicken page.
Yeah.
Like, you might be into some hot chicken, and they kind of evolved from there.
They kind of over that. And then like to end on that with like, actually no, they need to hear what you're just like randomly saying to your wife.
Like exactly what you and your mates are fucking yelling about at 3 a.m. at the pub. Like, yeah, for sure.
Need that data.
We're going to pass that.
Anyway, this is
a long way off from where we were.
Long way off, but the point
Apple claims that they don't do that.
They don't.
You buy an iPhone.
They're repulsed by that stuff. So Apple's being dragged kicking and screaming into the LLM AI future.
The Apple Intelligence future.
The Apple Intelligence future, that's correct. And LLM stands for lots and lots of Macs.
Love Macintosh.
Can you imagine Tim Cook say that? Love Macintosh. So they've been dragged into this future. The fact that you need vast amounts of processing power to do a lot of what people expect from things like ChatGPT and whatever puts them in like a thorny position because they've prioritized privacy so much. So the idea of like sending something vital off to a server farm is just not it.
Yeah.
For whatever, even if the average person is probably not thinking about that, they need to maintain a bit of that. So anyway, point being, Apple Intelligence, they have developed a 3 billion parameter LLM that does most of what their new features are on device.
Yeah. Doesn't leave your phone, folks.
Doesn't leave your phone. It processes it all on your phone. So you're doing like image generation stuff, which we'll talk about in a bit. You're doing like a lot of these new kind of like
text stuff.
Text summaries, like summarizing websites you're reading, giving you like summaries of your notifications and what's going on.
If you jump into the group chat and you're 50 messages behind, it'll tell you. And literally, I was reading today, I just popped into a group chat in iMessage and I was reading and I was like, how would an LLM summarize the bullshit that is afoot here? It would not make heads or tails of this. Anyway.
It's going to be, the summaries of like the group chat that Apple automatically generates for you will be funny for at least a week.
Yeah, there'll be some screenshotable moments for a week and then we'll get over it.
We'll get over it. But the point is a lot of this is been done on device. And Apple has already been doing a bit of AI stuff on device. You know, if you search dog in your iPhone photos and it pulls up every single photo of a dog, that's already happening on your device. That's being done by your phone, processed by like the iPhone neural engine or whatever, and it's not going to any server. So they're doing a bunch of that, but they realize that there's a lot of AI processing that requires a lot more grunt than even a new iPhone or iPad. Needs to go off to a server somewhere.
Yeah, which we've talked about before. It's like, what is the, what can they do on your phone versus in a server? And as we've said, like you were talking about, asking for a cheesecake recipe, burning down, like a quarter acre of the Amazon rainforest or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the point, right? Your phone can't do that.
It can't do it.
It'll just burn the battery. So
the inference can't be done. So they have two solutions, basically. The second one we'll talk about in a bit. But the first one is they've developed something called private cloud compute. And basically what this is, as we kind of predicted this based on some reporting before, but they have a whole bunch of servers that they're pulling up that are built on M2 chips, which are like, their series of microchips. They're not NVIDIA chips like the vast majority of AI is being run on. And they run iOS and they're sitting in a server farm.
Yeah, and they do this weird thing where they kind of spin up an instance every time. If you ask for a cheesecake recipe and your phone is not going to be able to give it to you, then sends it off there and it will spin up an instance of it. It'll ask the question, return the answer, and then
delete everything.
It's stateless.
Exactly. The idea being that every single thing you need to do that's off your phone, it does it in the most secure and privacy intense way that it can.
And
your data is vaporized. Apple has no access to it.
Yeah.
The FBI can't audit the things you've been asking the AI or like whatever.
Yeah, I saw an InfoSec guy being like, if you had unlimited money and said, make the most private cloud you can, like this is probably what you do. Like, again, it is quite incredible that they're spending so much time and effort to just like ensure that they're the privacy thing when at least... I appreciate it. It's great. Fine. But literally, I really feel like 99.9% of people...
Yeah, no one cares about
They wouldn't even know the difference between like... They wouldn't know what the cloud is, really. Let's be perfectly frank. Let alone like... sometimes my device is doing it and sometimes it's going to a server. Like, they don't think like that. It's just like, I ask phone question.
No, and it really does, I think, speak to how insanely central Apple thinks this is to their brand.
Yeah.
Because you're right. It's like the majority of... Yes, there's a lot of ambient sort of like what's being done with my data in the air.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, are they going to be able to understand exactly what has happened here? Because let's be honest, it's a real wonky answer to be like, oh, your data gets handed off and then like an instance is created on this like vast server farm.
It's like audited by third parties.
That's right. Because they also, exactly. He got up and he said, there's like a third party audit that gets done to ensure that data remains sacrosanct.
Yeah, and like
deleted.
The hardware can't have, but like they've gone to extreme lengths. But I mean, look, it's probably good. As I said, I appreciate it that they're doing that. That's great. Like, so the FBI won't know that I've asked for a napalm recipe or whatever.
Yeah,
sure. But it is interesting how they like are really leaning on this. They obviously see it as a big differentiation from competitors, and B, I think that using it as a wedge for multiple things. But it is core to Apple is this privacy thing.
Yeah.
But still, and what's interesting as well is like I think from a the majority of consumers, from 99.99% of people, they wouldn't have a clue what the hell any of this means. Well, because they're happy to just use Google Maps and whatever. Like they're using the cloud all the friggin' time with every service you use. But then the response has been like Elon Musk on Twitter being like, wow, Apple no longer the privacy company. They're just handing your data over.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the fact Elon is mad because he just raised $6 billion for an AI company, XAI, which obviously Apple are not going to add to their phone. Because Elon tweeted, he was like, if Apple goes through with this, I will ban all Apple devices at all my companies, and any visitor has to leave their phone in a Faraday cage at the front desk. I mean, obviously it's kind of posturing, but
I mean, also a Faraday cage, let's be clear, you can kind of build one out of a bit of tin foil. Like a tin foil hat is, I think the idea there is it's a kind of a Faraday cage of sorts.
Yeah, it's a Faraday cage to block out the FBI reading your mind. The CIA, sorry, it's more of a CIA thing to do. But yeah, so getting to what Apple actually wants you to fucking do with this stuff. They announced in the back part of this presentation all the things you're going to do. Part of it are things that we've talked about in the past, which is like you can query your message history or query everything on your phone.
Yeah, the coolest stuff I thought was like, if you're trying to fill out a form in Safari that asks for your driver's license number, you can just say, hey Siri, put your driver's license.
Well, I think it just automatically pulls it. It's just like, here's a driver's license number.
And but it does it from like scanning your images in your, because it already, as we've discussed, like you can search driver's license in photos and it'll like pull up pictures of a driver's license, but it can pass that and put it in. So like, and you're kind of doing multiple things there. And this is what I said, like these are the features that I think AI would be useful for. All the stuff we've talked about before. And like, what time is mum's plane coming in was an example they used. And it's able to kind of pass your emails and messages with your mum who says that she's catching this flight, look up what flights are happening and then tell you here's when the plane is due to land. Stuff like that. That's cool. I think that's cool.
Yeah, that works well. We should mention that some of this stuff comes in concert with an enhanced Siri, which is like LLM enabled now.
Yeah.
Which Siri can now pull that information, perform tasks in your...
Well, it does the thing we were saying would be good, which is like it interprets what we say and then translates it to like Siri mode, like to make it the actual command work. Like it's doing the thing that we kind of asked for, where I can say like, put up the blinds in my kitchen, and it doesn't say like, what the hell are you talking about? There's no song called Blinds.
In short, it's using Apple's native LLM to make Siri what it was like pitched as 14 years ago.
Yeah.
I need to stress that Siri's been a thing for 14 years. And you can now, because it was originally pitched as like a voice assistant, but you can now interact with it in text.
Yeah.
You can like do a double tap at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah.
Anywhere
and the whole screen, like there's like a ring around the screen now.
Yeah,
when it's in Siri mode.
It all starts to wooze and you can type it in. I did find it kind of funny that they were kind of like, they brought up the text input for Siri, and as an example of what you can do, the first thing he did was like set me a timer for 30 minutes, which is exactly what people have been using Siri for exclusively.
It's like one of the two things that people use Siri for. Yeah. There you go. Something went wrong when literally it heard you say Siri timer.
Anyway, so it Siri's enhanced and now lets you perform actions within the operating system across apps. You can include it with the API.
Yeah.
And you can move, things like delete this email or at this time send this message to someone.
Yeah.
Just like a whole bunch of different things you can do.
Yeah, which we're kind of
pulling data from everywhere.
And this is where I think it's kind of interesting in the sense that you can kind of see maybe that juxtaposition within the organization of the people wanting to talk about AI and people not wanting to mention AI, in that what quote unquote AI is going to be good for is just like little quality of life improvements. Like we said, like doing these things where you can ask it to find your driver's license number and it can do it. You can ask it to make, right now in Photos, how it automatically makes a movie of like, the golden hour or whatever. You can ask it to specifically be like, make a movie of that time I took my daughter. Well, actually, they use this when I took Bobby fishing.
Yeah.
And I want to say, Apple says, they're a company, like Apple devices don't kill people. I saw a dead fish in their presentation.
So you're saying that
they murdered a fish.
They killed a fucking fish.
It was a big fish too.
They aided and enabled the death of a fish.
Yeah.
I don't know if any court would convict in that circumstance.
I'm just saying. I didn't like to see a corpse as part of an Apple presentation. I didn't like to see it. Maybe
A
that's
dead
just
body.
me.
A once living creature robbed of life.
Yeah.
No, that's fair enough.
And for what?
For what?
No, but
to demonstrate the photo organization capabilities of the new iPhone.
But yes, this is full tea leaf reading. Like, I hypothesize that one part of the organization is kind of like, or like a certain group within it is, we've been using machine learning, we've been using AI forever, and we're just implementing them as features. We don't need to say that all this stuff is AI. Like, it's just a better product. It's just a better feature. And a lot of these are just like, yeah, okay, that is a better feature. It's great that I can now, you can fill in my driver's license from just like
Ambiently absorbing information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, and, you know, it can tell me when my mum's flight is landing and this, that, and the other through just connecting 3 things in a row. Because that's the other thing with Siri. Apparently now you can ask it to do multiple things in a row and it will kind of prioritize them. And
This classic AI agent thing. It's not quite there, but it's in there.
And also should be worth saying that this is all coming soon, like coming at some point, and most of it is only available on the 15 Pro.
Yep.
Like the latest, most expensive phone, and then obviously
the M chips on the laptops as well. As long as you've got an M1 or later, you can do it as well.
Yeah. Which like, but this is the Apple thing in that hopefully, if this all works as well as they suggested it will, which obviously big asterisk, but still, this is kind of what we want with AI. Like, we don't want to completely revolutionize our workflow and like, you can't do anything by text anymore or whatever, or everything's a chatbot and, you know, it'll organize your flight. You just want like quality of life to just get a little bit better on your devices, and it's a little bit more handy, and it's kind of delightful when you intuitively like, can I just like ask it to do it? And it does.
Yeah.
That's the stuff we love, folks.
Well, yeah, exactly. If they can pull that off, you can kind of, a lot of it is sort of things that I think will automatically happen, and there'll be lots of touch points where they can encourage your average user to use this stuff, or it just shows it to them. I'm sure there's a wow moment there if you're an average person and you're filling out a form on your iPhone and you're going to punch in your driver's license and it just knows it.
Yeah.
Or some people may find that unsettling, and that's fair enough. But like, a lot of people will be like, oh, wow, that's probably a helpful use of LLMs. But also it's worth mentioning that Apple has also announced a bunch of crap that's very much on like the hypey side of LLMs. The big one is like image generation, which I didn't expect they were gonna
hard into it.
Have. So on the what? So the first thing they announced was like Genmoji.
Yeah, this is another thing where I think that maybe me and you, James, and you, the listener, are probably, I suspect a lot of people listening, you know, you, the listener, and us, like there's not a lot of like memojis flying around in my group chats. No. Maybe ironically occasionally, but evidently, because I spend a lot of time on this, there are different cultures.
I will say there is one emoji that gets a bit of airplay in my chats occasionally, and you may have seen it on Twitter or whatever. It's the one of like the pig with its head exploding.
Yeah, the boar.
the boar going... That one's funny.
That is funny. I mean, there's a bit of T-Rex action occasionally I see, but you know.
Yeah. Well, this one is kind of like the Meta custom stickers.
Yeah.
You can create your own emoji based on
whatever.
I got to read it. I wrote this down when he said it because he was trying to come up with examples of why you might use it, and he came up with, this is Craig Federici again, the software guy, a Genmoji complaining about a rowdy squirrel that's outside of your bedroom window. And then he brought up a picture of like a little squirrel. It was like a little emoji of like a squirrel looking through a window. And I was like, well, I guess so. But let's be honest. The average use of it is going to be someone's going to type in Luigi from Mario with tits.
Yeah.
And seeing if they can get over the line with that. Anyway, so like the Genmoji stuff. And then they also announced pretty aggressively like full-on generative AI images that you can create. There's a whole new app where you can like fuck around with them. Now, the typical ChatGPT image sort of thing, where it's kind of like, oh, it's your friend's birthday. Send a picture, like a generated cartoon image of them.
Yeah, you might
with
want
a
to
cake.
But I mean, I guess the way they kind of tried to level it up is like, you know, because it knows who your mum is because of your photos. You can say like, send a picture of mum as Superwoman.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, sure, she'll love that.
Yeah. The example they used was like, it's someone's birthday, so just send them a picture of them holding a cake. I was like, if someone did that to me, they'd be out of my life.
Yeah, like what is?
But
it's a real aunt thing to do.
That's aunt coded behavior. But at the same time, considering the amount of insane AI picture slop that's on Facebook right now, courtesy of Meta.
This is what I mean. Again, maybe this shit will get absolutely thrashed. Maybe this is normal to just like in the morning or like at a certain, just send your friends pictures of themselves holding
as a
various pieces of food or whatever.
Yeah. But like there's
like a crocodile version. If you every morning were like, morning mate, hope you had a good night's sleep, and it was just like a picture of me as like a Tyrannosaurus or something, like that'd be kind of cool.
Maybe a photo. Maybe I was like, good morning, Raf. Hey mate, recording today, and then like a little image of you sleeping in a bed wearing like a night robe and like one of those little hats.
Yeah, a little nightcap.
That could be good. Yeah, that could be nice. But I think the big takeaway from this, apart from the fact that they did it, which I find bizarre, that they've really led with this. But again, you know, maybe the vast majority of users are kind of interested in that. But the fact that they have made the images, they look like dog shit. Because it wasn't entirely clear whether it's being generated on device or partnering with the server. I think it might be the latter.
Yeah, I felt like this was an OpenAI thing.
Yeah, well, it's being passed off to the Apple server. Because it's definitely their own model, their own image model. But I just don't know whether it's been happening locally or whatever.
No, true.
But the fact is that...
Which I guess... But that's also not clear. So it's like the private cloud, that's using their own internal LLMs? And
it is, yeah.
Yeah.
So the private... Because we're going to talk about the OpenAI stuff in a sec. That's all on Azure.
Yeah.
You know, all the private cloud stuff is their own LLMs.
Yeah.
But all the images it's producing, they look like shit, but they're very, 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 very cartoony. So no one's ever going to mistake... There's not going to be a Pope Balenciaga situation.
No.
And I think that's by design.
Yeah.
They were like, we'd love people to be making like fucked up little cartoon images of their mum holding a cake, but we don't want anything that could be misinformation.
It's like Memoji-ish.
Yeah, it's all cartoony crap. Again, I think it looks low rent. Like they put it up on the screen, like this horrible cartoon image of this woman holding a birthday cake.
Well, yeah, and then like they used on the iPad, you know, sketching a... What was it? It was like a Colosseum-esque thing.
Like
and
the
then
Taj Mahal, or like Mughal architecture or whatever.
And like up-reses it to like that weird, sheeny AI version of things. And like in their presentation, like it did not look good. No.
And it's actually funny because we were talking about literally last week that Microsoft rolled out the MS Paint thing where you can turn MS Paint into... And at the time we were like, who wants to do that? And then Apple's come out with it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, maybe it's user testing or something that people actually, like, love this shit.
Yeah.
Like, the idea of being able to draw a shitty horse and have it be turned into, like...
A cool horse.
A cool, as you say, it looks like a weird, bizarre, shiny candy thing.
Yeah.
Maybe people love that.
I mean, and, like, the other thing was, you know, it corrects your handwriting as well, kind of. Like, if you draw on the screen, it, like, makes your handwriting neater.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Sorry, anyway, that's off track again. But...
So that's what they did. But the last piece of the Apple AI thing is, as we've talked about time and time again, the OpenAI partnership, which they did announce.
They did announce, and I'm going to take a W on this. I predicted that we wouldn't see
Sam Altman.
He was in an interesting twist that no one predicted. He was there in the crowd.
He was there. Well, yeah, he was, because obviously
he was present.
All the Apple things are pre-recorded now.
Yeah.
But they play it in Steve Jobs' auditorium or whatever. But yeah, he didn't appear, and I think it is kind of telling that they brought out like some random executive from Ubisoft to talk about Assassin's Creed, but they didn't bring out Sam Altman to talk about what is a fairly substantial partnership.
But they invited him to watch?
But he was there? Like, although, you know, they invited many. You could probably just get a regular developer invite if you wanted to go.
Yeah.
But...
Well, do you think there's a lottery? Because, like, more developers want to go. Do you think he just signed up for the lottery?
He got it. So, I mean, you can wonder whether, like, they ever intended to have him out. Because there's a bit of a vibe of, like, putting a flag up over Iwo Jima to having Sam Altman come in, having conquered both Microsoft and Apple.
Oh, absolutely.
As, like, they probably didn't want to be that vibe. But there's also the sense of, like, there's been a bit of controversy about OpenAI recently, Scarlett Johansson stuff, the employee disclosures, general vibe that they're sickos. Maybe they didn't want him coming up. But the point was, they announced the OpenAI partnership, and they really underlined the fact that this is just the first one we're doing.
Yeah, this is an exclusive.
This is an exclusive, and with the obvious suggestion being, we're going to introduce the Google one when we ink the deals. But he was like, why not start with the best product and the market leader? We're partnering with OpenAI. And it is a very, very light integration to the point where some people said online, did they even need to do this?
Yeah.
Even as a stopgap solution. All it is now is that if you ask Siri a question that is beyond Siri's capabilities, I know that before we were talking about making the strawberry shortcake or whatever, but I think that is actually beyond Apple's LLM capabilities.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
If you ask, I want a strawberry shortcake recipe, Siri will come back to you and say, great question, do you want me to ask ChatGPT? And then you can say yes or no.
Yeah.
You get that prompt every time you ask a question that's beyond its abilities.
Yeah.
And then it literally just sends it to GPT 4.0 for Omni.
Omni, yeah.
And it returns a text answer in like the Siri prompt at the top of your screen. And that's it.
Yeah. And yeah, like it's as text, yeah. It's just like meta AI, like anything. You know, just you can ask, but it'll go to a third party. Siri won't even read it out for you. Which like, and then they mentioned that like, and we'll be introducing new partners soon, so you can choose the AI LLM for that kind of stuff.
They didn't totally gloss over this, but it was like the least amount of effort they gave to anything in their AI section. And it definitely has the stink of like a stopgap. Someone brought the example of like having Google Maps and then replacing it with Apple Maps at some point down the line. They don't have an AI that's capable of this, at least for the moment.
Well, or the server capacity, right? Is like
so that, and like, you know, they stress that like your data will not be kept on OpenAI servers. It'll be deleted. It won't be trained on that. Again, it's like, then why did you... who has been clamoring for this introduction?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they kind of just had to because,
Yeah.
I mean, you can already do it on so many apps on the iPhone, and like people just will expect. I think the thinking is that people will expect for you to be able to ask like, was Napoleon based or whatever, and you'll be able to do that on your phone.
Yeah,
and you know, so this is the start. But yeah, it is a kind of. I don't like, you know, the talk about the OpenAI partnership. Basically, it was like the headline chat is like was around that and the speculation between Gemini and OpenAI. And this is really just like, it's a kind of choose your plugin.
Yeah. And it's not, it should be stressed that it's not a chat-bot. It's like, it really is designed for you to like ask a question and get an answer.
It's basically here's what I found on the web of, you know, but LLM-ified.
So but at the same time, as many people pointed out, Apple would be paying for this.
Yeah, presumably they'd be paying for API.
Because there was conversations about, could this be like the Google deal where Google pays an insane amount of money and gets access? This really strikes to me as something where it's like Apple would be paying an OpenAI bill.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, whether it's like a lump sum deal that they've come to or it's like whatever, a per token fucking thing. That would be funny.
No, it probably is some kind of... I would assume it's just like they're paying an API bill. They probably got a discount, a bulk discount, but like they'd be just paying... That's my guess. That's with no information at all. It's like, and which is what's interesting about like OpenAI stuff, right? We've talked about it before. How, you know, the fact of the matter is, if you're an organization that's using AI to summarize and try and predict answers to a customer in like your customer service operation or whatever, it's very easy to actually just like change from one AI API, like one AI service to another. Like everyone probably starts with OpenAI because that's the big buzzy one. But then as soon as you look at the bill, you're like, Jesus Christ, isn't there a cheaper alternative? And they end up, you know, usually like running Llama on their own AWS instance or whatever, like a cheaper alternative. And so from OpenAI's perspective, it's like, okay, if generative AI is like commodified, then what do we do to stand out? And then from their perspective, it's like, well, they're obviously running hard at like the consumer level. Like we want everyone to be a premium ChatGPT subscriber, but they run into like, okay, you're competing with Apple and Google. To me, it kind of what stuck out is like, yeah, wow, like from an Apple perspective, Apple are really just saying like, you're a commodified plugin right now. It makes it tough for OpenAI to be. Altman obviously has dreams of them being the next Apple or the next Google or whatever it is. This to me kind of underlined how tough it is for them to get from where they are to being anything basically more than like an API service provider.
Yeah. And there's also, I think, another under-described point. I haven't really heard anyone make this point, but there was, from the other side, reporting that Microsoft and Satya Nadella were very concerned about the Apple integration stuff. Because obviously, from Microsoft's end, they've pumped tens of billions of dollars into OpenAI in this, not an acquisition, but also kind of an acquisition sort of way.
Well, it's like we own your future profits until AGI.
Yeah.
And then to remind people, like, whatever that means.
Yeah. And then for them to turn around and be like, hey, we're actually doing a massive deal with Apple. It makes you wonder if like Microsoft will kind of like...
I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, it's all using Azure.
Yeah.
Or
it's
Azure.
all being fed, it's all being... Yeah, no, you're right. It is being fed back, and it's all contributing to the bill on the Microsoft end of how much OpenAI is spending on...
But like, you're also right that like Microsoft... Meanwhile, like literally last week, we talked about
exactly. The integrating all this stuff system
Copilot plus
Microsoft
PC.
Copilot plus PC. This is a premium episode last week for those who want to go back and listen. Yeah, that's interesting. And then, sorry, the other AI feature, which I believe you can integrate OpenAI with some features, but a lot of it is the Apple LLM, is like being able to highlight any bit of text and get like a Grammarly type grammar check where it's like you should use this word, blah blah blah, and also being able to like rewrite things.
Yeah, which is just, you know, they're like write an email in what is it, Apple Mail, and then highlight it all and say like make it more professional.
Make it more professional, and there's like a professional button.
Yeah,
that
you have like 3 options, like casual, professional, and I don't even know what the other one, academic.
So you can highlight it, hit make it professional, and I don't know, makes it sound like it's been spat out by GPT.
Yeah, exactly.
And that you're a robot.
Yeah.
And they did the whole... Every AI company, and now Apple included, loves this thing of like, you can highlight this text and say, rephrase it as a poem.
Yeah.
And it's like, if someone ever sends me a poem in a professional communication...
I'm not replying.
Actually, what the example they used was like organizing a trail run and then turning a bit of the information into a poem.
I don't want to read.
That's weird sex stuff to me.
No.
Going on a trail run with like people that speak in poems.
No one reads poems. This is fact. I'm talking directly to you, the listener. Again, I know you might be driving your car on your way to work thinking, fuck me, just get me through another day. What percentage of people in the world read poetry?
Unfortunately, you know, poetry has been outmoded.
So why then would I want to turn things into a form of words that no one wants to read?
The day that Space Invaders landed, poetry was outmoded. No one has read a poem since Space Invaders landed.
I don't think so. Not a long one.
Feel free to fact check me on that. If you've read a poem.
No, and we're not talking about, it's got to be longer than either a limerick or a haiku.
Yep. It's got about what we're talking about, like, you know,
8 lines or more.
That's right.
A page. You got to have read a poem for a page. And right now you're thinking, I don't want to have to do that just to prove the boys wrong. Like, that's a pain in the... Reading a page of poetry?
It's sad, but it's true. Poetry completely outmoded. And now they're telling us to put it in emails?
Yeah, like, a cool way to tell the boys about, like, our ski trip or whatever is, like, make it a poem?
A rude limerick? Heavens no. Anyway, so this
I got to read this in song?
So this is what Apple announced. I actually, in a lot of ways, I think they went further than I expected. Like I said, the depth of image generation stuff surprised me that they went so hard on that. But at the same time, the OpenAI partnership is so scant that it's like they could have just not had it. And I don't know if a lot of this comes down to, again, these power struggles about should we be handing core functionality of our new software release to these cowboys?
Yeah. Well, also balancing it with, like, them being very clear, like, do you want us to send this to OpenAI or to ChatGPT or whatever, being able to be like, the fact that it said that, you know, when I asked it, would you have sex with a crocodile in order to stop, like, a nuclear holocaust or whatever, and it said no, you know, like, they don't, it's like, that was ChatGPT, so they can still kind of palm that off.
That's what we talked. It's like, it is plausible deniability.
Yeah.
When it gives a kind of rock and roll response. It's like, well, I'm sorry, but that's Sam Altman's problem.
Yeah.
That was
and
not
you can
us.
choose the LLM. Like, if you don't like the woke answers it's giving or whatever, you can put your own based LLM in there, like, depending on, you know, what's featured. But also, as you say, being like, we're not integrating OpenAI and, like, you know, summarizing my iMessage or whatever. It's not. It's not going to be like Meta, where you can just ask Meta AI within a chat.
So overall, I was like generally impressed with what they came out with. There's lots of like useful stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of quality of life improvements.
I'm probably not going to get it to rewrite my emails, but if it puts stuff in front of me at the time I want to see it in a helpful format, and I don't have to go digging for shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, love that. But I think this is going to be a real testing point when it lands in beta. It's going to launch in beta, apparently, come September or October when they release the final version of iOS 18. It will be interesting to see how much people pick up on it and use it, like average people. I think we're going to see a lot of cooked emojis.
Well, maybe. I don't know if we will. I mean, some people will. I think some people are going to see, heaps of cooked emojis. I suspect that the emoji stuff, I mean, we have it with Meta, like, we have it in WhatsApp. You can ask it to make stupid pictures. And it gets used a tiny little bit.
All right, the boys are using it all the time.
But, like, that kind of thing, which is the weird headline feature stuff, maybe, like, I just can't see that, like, totally changing the way we use our phones. I think that, the little things like being able to say, like, what's my driver's license number, like, or just auto-filling, like, I love that stuff. That's the stuff we want, folks. Just remember my mum's birthday or whatever. If you could suggest me a present for my mum, like a few days before her birthday, without me doing anything, like on Amazon or whatever, that would be amazing. It's not going to be able to do that.
No,
but
it's gonna. What if it recommends that you send a extremely stylized cartoon image of her holding a cake, and the cake has your face on it?
See, this kind of stuff.
Just say that you would like that.
I'm gonna get that from my mum. I'm gonna receive that, a cake with my face on it, from my mum.
And that sums it up, folks. Of all of everything we just talked about, everything that was in the presentation, your mum's gonna send it to you.
Yeah. Happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday.
If you're listening to this, did you know there's another world out there where you get a second episode of Down Round a week?
Yep, it's called Down Round Premium.
That's right, and there's no interruptions.
No interruptions, no ads, 2 episodes a week, including the free one you're getting right now, plus another one.
Yep, $7 a month, not a week, a month, downround.net. Downround.net, instant access to the whole back catalogue as well. You've got so much to catch up on.
There's so much. Get around it.